You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So our newly elected mayor, Bruce Harrell, he is committed to taking a tougher stance on crime. And most recently, he promises to bring in more officers to help handle the violent surge. What does the violent surge look like? Well, funny you should ask. Article last week that I didn't cover, but was out there. Violent crimes in Seattle reached 14-year high in 2021, according to a report from the Seattle Police Department. And we just know this is going on. We know that crime across the nation in so many big cities, it's gone up. And in a lot of these cities, you've defunded the police and you're kind of working your way through that. So what does this refund the police look like? That's what we're going to talk about today. And why is it so important? Well, because these crimes, they're not getting better. Do you know what I mean? I mean, this stuff is just ongoing. And if you read the news or pay attention to the news, you're like, oh, that's not good. Ooh, that's not good. Even here in Bellevue. So I'm recording this to you just outside of Seattle where we're talking about, just a few miles to the east of Seattle. Even in Bellevue, we've got some, I'm going to, at the end of this podcast, I'm going to read a funny one. It has to do with Applebee's, an anti-vaxxer, and a meat cleaver. All right. Yeah. Stay tuned for that. I mean, you don't want to miss this important stuff. Getting back to what the mayor's going to do to take a tough stance on crime, hire some more police officers, that kind of stuff. All right. Before we jump on in, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies, and some say that I read news for reasonable people. All right. Let's do this. Why wouldn't we? I mean, this stuff is just so nutty. I was in Seattle 2 days ago, and some of the stuff I saw, I was trying to think of how many crimes I actually saw. And I'm just driving around. I'm just in my car with my social media director. We're doing some stuff, and we're just driving around. And we went up to Aurora, where there's a whole bunch of channels that are recording, YouTube channels that are reporting what's going on there, because there's about a 5-block stretch that is just a free-for-all as far as working girls walking up and down this, what used to be an old freeway. It's a multi-lane freeway. They're just walking up and down and, got their goods for sale. And one of my kids works out at a gym that's right in the middle, Planet Fitness, right in the middle of this area. So I kind of wanted to see all that. So we saw that happen. I also saw a guy, and I was driving, we're leaving the area, and I'm like, that dude's Antifa. I mean, it's middle of the day. It's probably, 55 degrees out. It's not cold. I mean, that's warm for Seattle. California, not so much. But this guy, he had a hooded sweatshirt on. He's dressed in all black, and he's carrying this big, thick stack of mail. I'm like, that guy's got a lot of mail. Wait a minute. Is that his mail? That's probably not his mail. And he just come from an apartment complex across the street. He was jaywalking. There's a crime right there. And so I watched him, and I kind of, I just watched him cross behind my car and around. And then he quickly flipped through all the mail, and he looked at the stuff. He opened something up, and then he dumped the whole pile like on a ledge on the sidewalk and just left it. That's littering. But he was stealing mail. So saw that, saw a whole bunch of just crazy stuff, saw some drugs. We had a young lady that pulled in front of us, jumped out, and this is in a parking lot, pulled in front of us, jumped out, yelled at the person behind us, wanted to know if they had a problem. And I don't know what her deal was, but she wasn't wearing a lot, if you know what I mean. I was like, oh, geez, I'd roll up the window. Where are we? Where are we? It was one of those kind of experiences. And then, on the way to this area, so this area is 145th. And so it's 8 miles north of downtown Seattle. On our way, you just see the homeless encampments literally in the underpasses of the freeway system. You got all this crazy graffiti going on. I'm not painting a very good picture of Seattle, am I? No. But the crazy thing is yes, this is in a lot of areas, but it's also specific areas in just the confines of Seattle. It's a handful of neighborhoods, but it's spreading. But the crime Not good. 14-year highs. So let's jump on in and let's finally get to the meat of the matter, right? Okay. So in his first State of the City address, Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell is promising to put more officers on the street. Department is dealing with massive staffing shortages, which impact police response times as violent crimes skyrocket. KOMO News asked the police chief and union president what it will take to hire more officers. What it will take is people wanting to become a police officer in Seattle. And that is a tough sell. As a real estate guy, I can spin pretty much everything. But police officer in Seattle, a lot of money, a crap ton of money. I mean, can I give you a car? I don't know. I believe in January of 2022, just last month, Seattle Police Department, if I get this wrong, it's because I'm mixing it up with Portland. Seattle Police Department had 4 new hires, but 25 officers that left, something like that. I mean, it was a pretty big net out migration. Same thing with Portland. I think Portland hired 2, but lost 10, something along those lines. I think those ratios are about right. So we are still going in the wrong direction. Now, some of those are just people retiring. Hey, I hit my 27 years or whatever with the force. I'm able to retire. I'm going to do that. Can't really blame them given what happened in 2020 and has continued to happen. So yeah, how are they going to hire more officers? It's going to be a long-term project. From out-of-control gunfire to open-air drug markets and random violent attacks, the Seattle Police Officers Guild President Mike Salon said he welcomes Mayor Bruce Harrell's promise to start reviving a depleted and dejected police force to handle a surge in violence. You need more cops. You need more cops. Crime is through the roof here and climbing in Seattle, and the residents are fed up and they want change, said Salon. Salon has a good podcast called Hold the Line. Yeah, that's a great name. I really like that name. In his State of the City address, Mayor Bruce Harrell said a holistic approach to fighting crime includes funding for 125 new officers this year and a special Seattle-specific academy class. So you've got the funding, but where are you going to get the people? And are you really going to have a special Seattle Academy class? You're going to have to do something pretty crazy to get these numbers up. And it's going to take a long time. And by the time you raise these rates of police officers, what are these crime, numbers going to look like? What's really interesting is that there's so many different people weighing in on, well, here's why I think crime is up. And there's just so many different opinions and nobody seems to agree. And a lot of it has to do with the pandemic. Since the pandemic, well, people are feeling frustrated with their lives and they're helpless. And so they're running around and shooting and stabbing each other. Okay. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but all right. So there's fewer police officers and the police officers are doing all this other stuff. Criminals feel emboldened. They feel empowered to go out and commit these crimes. There aren't the people in the downtown core there aren't the employees in the buildings. You don't have businesses open during the pandemic. We saw a lot of news stories about that early on in the pandemic, but that stuff is kind of behind us. It's kind of behind us. State of Washington, our King Inslee, he indicated that we are going to remove the mask mandate as of March 21st. My prediction was March 15th, I believe, 14th or 15th. I think it was 15th, and then I looked at a calendar and I realized, well, 15th is a Tuesday. Nothing ever happens on Taco Tuesday. So, it's probably March 14th. And so that was my prediction. I was, a handful of days off. But King County, they've said, well, even though the governor has said one thing, we're going to keep these masks. The timing isn't right yet. Hopefully you're in a state that's already done this. Because I had a big HIIT workout yesterday, and doing that high intensity interval training with a mask on is a real drag. Doing cardio with a mask on is a real drag. I'd really like to get rid of the masks. So King County executives, please follow the pattern of our governor and get rid of our mask mandate. And the King County, Washington, do we even care about any of this stuff anymore? I feel like we don't. I just get rid of it all. Let's start moving on. Let's move on because now we're in an endemic, no longer a pandemic, an endemic. Okay. So this will take a decade more of recruiting and changing the narrative away from the defunding nonsense where the fringe are blaming police for society's ills, said Mike Salon, president of the Seattle Police Officers Guild. Where we need to support the police, fund them. You can't say no to that. Now, you might say, well, we need a special kind of police officer. I think right now you just need more cops, period. That's kind of where we sit. You need them more in Portland as well. And it's just been this uphill battle. And now we've got this crazy story where so police officers in Seattle, if you are coming in on a lateral hire, which means you're coming in from another police department, you might get as much as a $25,000 bonus, I believe it is in Seattle. If you're a new hire, you might get a $10,000 bonus. And so you've got all these bonuses, but the current mayor got a note from the previous mayor. This all happens as of January 1. You got the switch over, and the funding for these bonuses wasn't done for 2022. So we've got these unfunded bonuses. So we got this kind of a cluster going on. Unfunded Seattle police hiring bonuses continued last month, contrary to city council vote. So the mayor needs to do some kind of executive deal where he funds these things. Whole thing is a crazy mess. We've also got a continuation on our former mayor, Jenny Durkin, and her disappearing texts, because we've got all these lawsuits to do with CHOP and the cities and Black Lives Matter, and there's lawsuits flying left and right. And somehow her phone had all of its texts deleted. The current police chief at that time, Chief Best, her phone got deleted. All right. A permanent interim police chief, Adrian Diaz, I think he had his phone text deleted. These guys are all saying under oath, guys and gals, let's not be sexist. These individuals are saying under oath in court that, hey, I got locked out of my phone. I think that's what Chief Diaz was saying. I got locked out of my phone. I went to the Apple store and they had to do a factory reboot. Okay. All right. I mean, I can kind of believe, I don't know. It sounds fishy when you've got these major lawsuits going on and the city has a huge amount of liability outstanding, and miraculously there's no texts from any of these phones. It sounds fishy to me, but I can't prove it otherwise. So I'm not gonna come right out and say, hey, they purposely did this. Because I don't know, and we don't know. There was a report that cost almost $500,000 done. It's one of these forensic reports. $500,000. What are you studying at that point? You're trying to figure out what happened with the texts. Well, what they did determine is that the setting on the phone wasn't set to forever on the texts. It was set to delete every 30 days. All right. But who did that is the question. Somebody in the city's IT department, somebody at Apple. I don't know. That's where you can kind of blame technology and go, somebody handed me my phone and I started talking on it and using it and texting, and I didn't realize that it was set to delete. And Carmen Best, our former police chief, she said, well, I delete my texts all the time anyway. Even though, as city employees, they're supposed to go through training on, information retention, because when a lawsuit comes up, people tend to want to have all the information. So you got that stuff going on. You got unfunded Seattle police hiring bonuses. You've got violent crime in Seattle reaching a 14-year high. Let's take a look at that super quick. Seattle Police Department released its annual crime report for 2021 on Friday, detailing across-the-board increases in rates of crimes across all major categories. I found that interesting because on the minor crimes, we're just basically not making those a crime, or, we're not pulling people over for damn near anything. And, you're certainly not pulling the ladies of the evening, the working girls. And let's be clear, this was a Wednesday at about 12:30 in the afternoon. We're cruising through this area. And by cruising, I mean driving. We're not pulling, you know what I mean? It's just like, whoa, where are we? What happened? What happened? Because I've been up and down that road. It's a major north-south arterial. It goes from downtown Seattle all the way up into the next county up. I mean, it goes way up there. So it's a huge arterial. And I've driven this arterial as an appraiser years and years and years. And it didn't have that kind of stuff going on back in the day. And by back in the day, I mean like 5 years ago. So we've got crimes across all major categories, and the whole prostitution thing, that seems to be alive and well, to the point where there are probably, I'm guessing, 4 YouTube channels that exclusively cover that. Not hard to find. All you got to do is type in under search Aurora, Seattle. You can get an idea of what I'm talking about. It's like, what are we doing? How is this going on? Well, it is. So you got increases in rates of crimes across all major categories. According to the report, overall crime increased by 10% from 2020 to 2021. And remember, 2020, in the majority of these cities, crime is up considerably over 2019. Violent crime increased by 20%, while property crimes are up 9%. And these are in Seattle, because these are Seattle statistics. A lot of people have given up reporting crime because you don't have enough cops on the street to handle all the 911 calls, let alone show up on the 911 calls. That's just how it's gone. Now, I believe it has gotten a little bit better, but for the most part, this is an ongoing concern. And the citizens are just like, it's like the citizens who are putting out concrete blocks in front of their businesses and their places of residence because the city isn't doing anything about the, homeless living in RV camps that oftentimes don't move. So when those get swept out, they're putting these enormous concrete blocks to deter big RVs from parking, because then it becomes, this lawless RV, homeless, unhoused community. And the city isn't doing anything really about anything. So it's kind of like, things are just, they're spiraling a little bit out of control. Seattle Police Department highlighted Seattle's violent crime rate as a primary concern. This is troubling. And it's a primary concern for citizens across the United States, right? Along with inflation, housing prices. Man, housing prices are going bonkers. Rent going bonkers. And we talked about, if you're a longtime listener of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast, we've been talking about that. Hey, I think rents are going to skyrocket. Oh yeah, there they go. And that's not a hard prediction. Inflation going through the roof. You dump a few trillion, and by a few, I mean a lot of trillion into the economy. What do you think is going to happen? Pricing. And yet you still got the incredible demand for goods, and you can't get those goods. And so when you do really want them, you're going to pay. And we are paying. Heating costs, fuel, energy, expensive. It's going up. These are not hard predictions to make. And crime, especially in a city like Seattle, where these people committing these crimes, they are emboldened to do so because, even if they do get caught, which the odds are very small, prosecutors are going to let them off. Judges are going to let them off. Do better next time. We believe in you. You go out there. You got this one. I know, on your 41st arrest. We got this. We know you can do better. Come on now. So, consistent with King County level reporting, shootings and shots fired events increased in Seattle over the last year as well. So, kind of name some of the neighborhoods. Majority of the shooting victims over the last year were Black, comprising 52% of the total, followed by white residents at 23% and Asian Pacific Islanders at 12%. To give you an idea, if you're not familiar with Seattle, I'll start off with the first statistic here. The Black comprising 52% of the shooting victims. Black population in Seattle is about 9% of the population. White is high 60 something percent. Asian Pacific Islander, Asian and Pacific Islander, I think they are about 13% of the population. We've got a big Asian and Pacific Islander population here. So that kind of gives you an idea of what's going on and where and what's happening. So, and meanwhile, 9/11 response times reached historic highs, averaging 10.5 minutes, with a median roughly of 7.5 minutes. In 2020, the average response time was 9.58 minutes. So 10 minutes, you're having a major crisis. 10 minutes is a long, long time. We just don't have the police officers to service all the calls. And to be honest, a lot of the calls, you're not going to get a response probably ever, because it's just not a priority and they can really only respond to so much. So, numbers down of police officers, crime going up, that is not the equation that you want. So it's a wild time in Seattle, and you've got this situation where businesses, and I've covered this a lot, businesses are going to be going back. I think March 1st, Redmond, here in Microsoft in Redmond, which is, 10 miles north and east of downtown Seattle. It's where One Microsoft Way is. Microsoft has said, hey, business is going back. You're going to have a bunch of other businesses in downtown Seattle and other areas of Seattle going back. So you're going to have this intersection of citizens going back to work facing this kind of stuff with a depleted workforce. What could possibly go wrong? This sounds like a perfect recipe for podcasts for days. All right. So that's kind of that. The mayor said he's going to do stuff. We don't know if the funding is there, but at least the mayor's saying, he's not saying, I think we should further defund the police, or this is going to be the summer of love. We're not going that direction. So from that standpoint, I'm glass half full there. But how long is it going to, we're down like 500 cops in Seattle. How long is it going to take to hire 200? We're in 2022 now. What are we going to hire? Are we going to have a net of, if we really get after it this year, a net of maybe 50 police officers positive? If we really hustle, I don't even know if that's possible, because you've still got a bunch of police officers. From what I understand down in Portland, you've got a bunch of police officers that are going to retire, that are, they've literally been hanging on, doing what they can to kind of, get through this time, because they need to have a certain number of years in to punch out and take their, whatever retirement package that they're shooting for. They want to do that, which is totally within, their right to do so. Hey, I'm going to retire here. And you've got a bunch of police officers that are going to be retiring. Those numbers are not, those are not going to slow down. And so how many police officers do you have to hire to get a net, in migration of these police officers? Probably a bunch. How's that for a technical term? We need a lot. Crazy. Okay, so that's that in Seattle. Let's talk about Applebee's and a man. I did not make this a main topic because YouTube does, they don't really, they're not big on when you're talking about somebody going after another human being with a meat cleaver. Let's do this though. So, okay. So I'm on Bell Red Road and 134th, and on the other side of the street, 6 blocks down, is an Applebee's. Very close. We can walk there. I have walked there before. I ate there last month, and I was not asked for my vaccination card, which I do have, regrettably, but I do have a vaccination card. And so a man swipes at Applebee's bartender with meat cleaver over vax proof. Not good. And so as of March 1st, and I'm recording this to you on the 18th of February, we will no longer need to provide proof of vaccination in King County. So this individual who got really worked up, not good timing. So I know there's a lot of anti-vaxxers out there, and I respect that if that's your thing. And, I'm more of I've become more of a anti-vax mandate guy. I didn't really want to get the vax either, but it was just one of those things where you're like, oh man, I need it for here. I got my parents, I got old people all around me. Okay. I just took it, right? I took it. Didn't really want to, but I took it. And, but I'm still anti-vax mandate from that standpoint, but not to the point where if somebody asks me for my vaccination card, that I'm going to get this worked up. A man in Washington state lunged at an Applebee's employee with a meat cleaver after being asked to provide proof of COVID-19 vaccination. I would not recommend that. I think there are better ways to handle this, like go to a different restaurant, because there are restaurants, including this one, wasn't asked for my Vax card. My girlfriend wasn't either. Before we walked in, she's like, "Do you have your Vax card?" And I have it in my wallet. Won't need it for that much longer, or we think we don't know, do we? I mean, we don't know. Michael Dusa, 58, was asked to leave the Bellevue, Washington restaurant on February 6th. And this is in Newsweek. This made it to Newsweek. After being unable to provide documentation of his vaccination status, instead of quietly complying with the bartender's request, he became enraged. According to KOMO News in Seattle, once outside, he began yelling and waving a meat cleaver above his head. At one point during the incident, Dusa lunged at the bartender with the knife. Meat cleaver, that's not good. Getting this upset. People are worked up. They are tired of these regulations. We are done. So I wouldn't carry it this far. This is excessive. This is unnecessary, especially considering this guy is now sitting in jail on some probably not good charges. And by the time he actually gets charged, guess what? The proof of vax mandate is it's going to be expired. The bartender was not injured as the door to the restaurant was closed before Dusa was able to connect. Dusa was taken into custody and placed in King County Jail, where he is currently being held on $75,000 bail. Do you think Northwest Bail Fund might come and help him out? No, I don't know. They only do Antifa, right? He's been charged with one count of assault in the second degree for assaulting the employee with a deadly weapon, according to documents provided by the prosecutor's office. Prosecutors in King County say Dusa has third and fourth degree assault charges pending from a July 2021 incident in a case from another county. We've got stuff going on. He's got convictions for theft and harassment in 2016. All right. You got a bunch of homeless people coming into the area and they are not right in the head. And this is one of those incidences. Nobody is reporting that this guy is a homeless individual, but here we are, right? I mean, this isn't the first incident of violence in response to the pandemic measures in Bellevue. Late last month, 33-year-old Angela Nommenson was recorded getting into a physical confrontation before pulling a gun on a gas station. It's the AM/PM at Bell Red Road and 148th. So 8 blocks further from the Applebee's. So we have just got stuff. We've got stuff going on. She was recording. She pulled a gun after a gas station, the gas station attendant. And I go to this AM/PM as well. These are super nice folks. It's kind of a family run business, super nice people. And they basically said, "Hey, we got a mask mandate. You can't come in without a mask." And I've seen lots of people in there also without masks, but that's a whole nother story. It seems random, doesn't it? Like sometimes people are like, "Oh, you got to have a mask. Where's your vax, man, your card?" And so, yeah. So within a mile of my office, 2 pretty good sized incidents happened. And you're like, what's going on? Crazy times. Is it making people just nutty? I think so. Need to get this stuff over and done with, right? Endemic, no longer pandemic. All right, that's it for me on this one. I know we covered a lot of stuff here. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, love to have you subscribe because we are news for reasonable people. All right, and you're reasonable, so am I. Thanks for being here. We'll catch up soon. Bye for now.